What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA Sunday, November 7th. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, we have a 7-game slate tonight, so let's take a look at the point guard position. I like Stephen Curry from the Golden State Warriors playing the Houston Rockets, who have the second worst defense overall. They give up the third most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Stephen Curry has averaged 49.7 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 32% usage rate. He's projected at 48.8 fantasy points here tonight, but I think he can score 52 fantasy points or more in this one and get you 5 times value or more. He's $10,700 DraftKings salary, $700 less on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 222 points scored in this game, and he scored 49 and 59 fantasy points in his last 2 games versus the Rockets. He's been underperforming a little bit for the past 3 games, only scoring 37, 42, and 39 fantasy points in the last 3 games. But now he's got a fantastic matchup, so I think he's going to have a ceiling game here tonight. So I like Stephen Curry here versus the Houston Rockets. Another point guard that I like is Mike Conley from the Utah Jazz playing the Orlando Magic, who have the 5th worst defense overall. They're middle of the pack defending opposing point guards. Mike Conley has averaged 30.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 29 minutes per game with a 21% usage rate. He's projected at 30.9 fantasy points here tonight. That's 4.7 times value. He's $6,600 DraftKings salary, and he's $1,200 less on FanDuel. So I love that FanDuel price. Probably a FanDuel play for me. Mike Conley has scored 38, 39, and 40 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 32, 29, and 30 minutes. Now this is a back-to-back for Mike Conley. That's why I think I'd only play him on FanDuel where he's so cheap, where he could hit value in limited minutes if they do decide to do that. So I like Mike Conley on FanDuel here versus the Orlando Magic. Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching. If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won, and we'll send you $25 PayPal. So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you. Now if you're looking for a DraftKings play, take a look at Spencer Dinwiddie from the Washington Wizards playing the Milwaukee Bucks, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Spencer Dinwiddie has averaged 33.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 30 minutes per game with a 25% usage rate. He's projected at 33.8 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's $6,700 DraftKings salary, $100 less on FanDuel. And Spencer Dinwiddie has scored 28, 18, and 39 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 22, 30, and 28 minutes. So a little bit of volatility here, but he can score 40 fantasy points or more, and his season average is pretty good, which would put him right around 5 times value and a good matchup. So I like Spencer Dinwiddie here versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. I like Caris LeVert from the Indiana Pacers playing the Sacramento Kings, who have the 11th worst defense overall, and they give up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. Caris LeVert has averaged 29.8 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 26 minutes per game with a 33% usage rate. He's projected at 29.8 fantasy points here tonight. Now, that's only 4.3 times value, but I think he can score 35 fantasy points or more in this matchup, get you 5 times value or more. He's $6,900 DraftKings salary, $400 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 222.5 points scored in this game, and he scored 24 and 45 fantasy points in his last 2 games versus the Kings. So I think he's going to be right in the middle there at around 35 fantasy points. It's a great matchup, so I like Caris LeVert here versus the Sacramento Kings. Now, I also like Josh Giddey. I've been liking this guy a lot lately. He just keeps producing from the Oklahoma City Thunder playing the San Antonio Spurs, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 8th most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. Josh Giddey has averaged 31.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 29 minutes per game with a 20% usage rate. He's projected at 32.1 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.1 times value. He's $6,300 DraftKings salary, $300 less on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 210.5 points scored in this game, and Josh Giddey has scored 33, 39, and 27 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 31, 34, and 27 minutes. So I like Josh Giddey here versus the San Antonio Spurs. Now, if you're looking for a value play here at the shooting guard position, take a look at Terrence Mann from the LA Clippers playing the Charlotte Hornets, who have the worst defense overall, and they give up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. Terrence Mann has averaged 24.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 30 minutes per game with a 16% usage rate. He's projected at 24.2 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.3 times value. He's only $4,600 DraftKings salary, $300 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 222.5 points scored in this game, and Terrence Mann has scored 26, 26, and 21 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 30, 31, and 32 minutes. So I like Terrence Mann here versus the Charlotte Hornets. Okay, let's take a look at the small forward position. Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups. I like Jae'Sean Tate from the Houston Rockets playing the Golden State Warriors, who have a good defense overall, but they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing small forwards. Jae'Sean Tate has averaged 24 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 27 minutes per game with an 18% usage rate. He's projected at 23.9 fantasy points here tonight, but I think he can score 25 fantasy points or more in this one, get you 5 times value or more. He's $5,000 DraftKings salary, $200 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 222 points scored in this game. And Jae'Sean Tate has scored 25, 27, and 35 fantasy points in the last 3 games. And his minutes have been ticking up. He's played 31, 33, and 35 minutes in the past 3 games. So I like Jae'Sean Tate here versus the Golden State Warriors. And here's a value play at the small forward position. I like Nicholas Batum from the LA Clippers playing the Charlotte Hornets, who have the absolute worst defense overall. They give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing small forwards. Nicholas Batum has averaged 24.9 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 28 minutes per game with a 13% usage rate. He's projected at 25.8 fantasy points here tonight, and that's 5.5 times value. He's $4,700 DraftKings salary, $800 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 222.5 points scored in this game, and Nicholas Batum has scored 27, 34, and 34 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 29, 29, and 31 minutes. So I like Nicholas Batum here versus the Charlotte Hornets. Okay, let's take a look at the power forward position. I like Harrison Barnes from the Sacramento Kings playing the Indiana Pacers, who have the 8th worst defense overall. They give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. Harrison Barnes has averaged 41.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 37 minutes per game with a 21% usage rate. He's projected at 41 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.5 times value. He's $7,500 DraftKings salary, $200 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 222.5 points scored in this game. Harrison Barnes has scored 36, 40, and 31 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 36, 38, and 35 minutes. So he's playing a ton of minutes, and it's a fantastic matchup. So I like Harrison Barnes here versus the Indiana Pacers. Now, another power forward that I like is Keldon Johnson from the San Antonio Spurs playing the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have the 3rd worst defense overall. They give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. Keldon Johnson has averaged 27.8 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 29 minutes per game with a 25% usage rate. He's projected at 27.7 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's $5,500 DraftKings salary, $200 more on FanDuel. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 210.5 points scored in this game. Keldon Johnson has scored 35, 26, and 22 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 33, 30, and 23 minutes. Now he's got a fantastic matchup, so I like Keldon Johnson here versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Okay, moving on to the center position. I like Jarrett Allen from the Cleveland Cavaliers playing the New York Knicks, who have the 7th worst defense overall. They give up the 8th most fantasy points to opposing centers. Jarrett Allen has averaged 35 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 16% usage rate. He's projected at 35.7 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's $7,100 DraftKings salary, $400 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 209.5 points scored in this game. But take a look at the last 3 games. Jarrett Allen has scored 41, 56, and 56 fantasy points, playing 38, 39, and 34 minutes. So I like Jarrett Allen here versus the New York Knicks. Now, I also like Miles Turner from the Indiana Pacers playing the Sacramento Kings, who have the 11th worst defense overall. and they give up the second most fantasy points to opposing centers. Miles Turner has averaged 33.5 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 27 minutes per game with a 20% usage rate. He's projected at 35.2 fantasy points here tonight, and that's 5.7 times value. He's $6,200 DraftKings salary, $800 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 222.5 points scored in this game, and Miles Turner has scored 30, 57, and 38 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 30, 28, and 24 minutes. So I like Miles Turner here versus the Sacramento Kings.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.